So hello, we are here to demonstrate to you the new IMS for the UNDG work planning. The system is newly online, and is still being improved, but as you know, the deadline this year for entering information is January 31st. 2015. So we've compiled a presentation to touch on a few important points, and then my colleague here will walk you through the website. So the presentation you're seeing here is available to download at ims.undg.org. It covers user types, work plan status, first time login, and a few other things in terms of resources and support that you can use. The first thing we'll touch on is user roles. So those of you with access to the system now have nearly all been given validator access. Currently there are two kinds of roles in the system, editor and validator. So a validator can do everything an editor can do. This image represents all the rights and permissions each user has. So as you can see, the validator is larger. It contains all of the permissions that the editor has. So if you only have one person on your team, yes, that validator can also do the work of the editor. Editors can enter information into the system. Validators can enter information, and they can approve the information so that it's marked as finalized and submitted into the system. And we'll talk about that a little more going ahead. There's a brief overview here. Offices can have up to 2 validators. If you responded to the DOCO ask a few months ago, you probably have had an account created already. If not, you will need to contact DOCO, and we'll have the email address for you at the end of this presentation. Offices can have several editors. So those editors are able to work on different parts of the work plan. They're able to view questions just so they can see what data is being collected and so forth. The only limitation is that while one person is editing the work plan, another person will have to wait, because simultaneous entry is not possible on the system. The work plan status, which I mentioned, is there are 3 phases that your work plan walks through: draft, submitted, and validated. So your work plan must be validated before it is considered complete, and your office is the one that says it is validated. This is essentially a way for a validator to review the material that may have been entered by a different editor or several editors before confirming to DOCO that this is the finalized version of the work plan. Anywhere on the site, if you look at the top to where the work plan button is, and we'll show you what that looks like shortly, you'll be able to see whether it's in draft, submitted, or validated mode. So here, submitted is highlighted. It's in that interim state. Users who are in the draft stage means that your work plan has been started but not yet submitted. So anyone using it can save and return later. You can log into the system as many times as needed, move between sections. You don't need to do them sequentially. The user can save and return later, and the system will also auto-save your progress every 5 minutes. You can also select Save as Draft. The Save and Submit button changes your work plan to submitted status. Now, if you log in and you find that you are not able to edit your work plan, that means it has probably been changed to submitted status. But don't worry. Anyone can reopen the work plan, an editor or a validator. So if it's before that January 31st deadline, any user can open the work plan and choose, if these buttons are at both the top and bottom of the page, revert to draft. And that will reopen the work plan so that you can edit or change or add information. Users who are validators can also mark as validated. So that is the button that transitions the work plan from submitted, the interim holding state for review, to validated. So once it's validated, it also cannot be edited. However, the validator, if wanted, can select undo, which will bring it all the way back to the beginning, that draft state where editing is possible. So before your work plan is considered complete for the year, you need to have a validator mark it as validated. However, if it is marked as submitted or validated accidentally before it's ready, you can always undo validation or revert to draft state.
Logging in. So as Martha mentioned before, if you responded to DOCO probably last fall about who should be given access to the system, you would have had a username created for you already. So your username would be your first initial of your name and then your last name. So if your name is Jenny White, your username would be J White. If not, you can request a username by emailing Harold. His email address is there on the screen, and you can request a username. To go with your password, to go with your username is a password. Again, if you had responded earlier, your password when you first log in would be 1234, and then they'll then request for you to change your password when you first log in. If not, if you need to have a username created, Harold will provide you with your password when you request your username creation. So do remember, when you are first logging in and have to change your password, you'll receive an email, and you must open the email and click the link in there to validate your account. It will block you out until you have validated that via the email. And so it'll tell you that your account has been disabled until you do that. So go to your email, check your junk mail if you're not seeing it, to validate that. If for some reason you're not getting that, it's not in your junk mail and it's not in your email, go ahead and email Harold, and he'll be able to check if perhaps we have the wrong email address for you, or if that's been changed, and we'll be able to get that corrected.
So here's a brief overview for you of the way the system is structured. So based on the former RCAR format, the annual reporting requirements include uploading a letter to the Secretary General summarizing what your UNCT has been working on and your achievements. It also requires you to put together a 2014 work plan and progress report, as well as a 2015 plan. When you're entering either of those, there's a basic structure to the system that may help you understand it a little more if you see it as laid out here. So first of all, every piece of information entered, apart from the letter to the Secretary General, needs to be categorized into a work stream or normative area. And on this site, you will see what those are and see descriptions of them. Once a work stream or normative area has been chosen, it could be something like delivering as one or human rights, you can enter an output. You can have anywhere from one output to as many as you'd like. Each output can own an activity. So you can put in as many activities as you would like, but activities are not required. This is sort of a way to conceptualize how the system is using the information in terms of relationships and what owns which other piece of information, so to speak. Speaking of the 2014 progress and 2015 plan, as noted, you'll need to complete both before submitting. You can see how to switch between the two here. These are screenshots of the menu bars on the website. And if you're in the 2014 progress, it is the lighter colored blue highlighted because it's the one you're entering information into. But you can see right there the option to choose circled the 2015 plan. If you do so, that activates the fields for 2015 plan and allows you to select from the work streams and normative areas there. Please note that this can cause some confusion. If you think you have entered data and then you're not seeing it, it's very possible it was entered in a different work stream or normative area, or even potentially in the alternate year than the one you're looking at. So maybe you entered something in the 2015 plan under normative area for gender that is going to not show up until you click back to that section. So just one thing to be aware of. I mentioned that we'd have some resources for you on the website itself, ims.undg.org. There is a list of user support documents. This presentation is one of them. There's also a list of all the fields available in the system, which you can share with colleagues who may want to know what the data asks are so they can prepare information. That'll give you a full overview of all the data being input into the system. It's even accessible to users who don't have system access. So even if someone is not an editor or a validator, they can download these documents so as to understand the system more thoroughly, and you don't need to provide them to a whole host of people if it's not needed.
So if you encounter issues while you're trying to access the site, there's essentially two different people to contact depending on what your issue is. So if you need a username created, if you're having a problem logging in, or if you have questions about the information that you're supposed to enter, that would be a question for Doko. So you can email Harold directly, and he'll be able to sort that out and answer your questions. If you're having a technical issue when you're using the system, something doesn't seem to be working, a save button isn't working, just an example, then that you would email the support email. So that's support/ims@developmentgateway.org, and we will respond to you and try to resolve your issue as soon as possible. So again, it's kind of two different issues. There's your usernames and logins, and then questions about procedures or the information, and that's a Doko question. But if for the technical issues with the system, you can email us at Development Gateway.
Great. So we'll switch over now to demonstrate the system for you. Again, this is ims.undg.org, and we will pull it up for you now.
Okay. So when you first go to the screen, you're going to see just a few different things. So obviously you have the login, where you would enter your username and your password, and also if you forgot your password, you can request one here. But also you have some basic user support documents that you can access without even logging in yet. So you have a list of all the fields in IMS in PDF that you can download. So this was created because we kept getting questions about what information was needed, not necessarily by those who had access yet. Also, those who are awaiting their username can start preparing the data. And so here you can just see it's a quick list of all the information that is going to be requested for input later. Also, we have the presentation that we just showed you accessible here as well. So you can go ahead and download that PowerPoint as well for reference. So now we're going to log in to username and password. Great. So now this is your dashboard, essentially. This is your home page. So you can see here there's 3 different blocks. So for this system, when it's finished, you will actually have 3 different modules within your same dashboard. So you have the UNDG progress, which is coming later, and the coordination profile, which is also coming later this year. The one that is created right now and that you will be working on is the work plan module. Now, you can see here what the status that is highlighted, draft. So we have it, the work plan is currently in draft form. We also, again, have access to those documents that we had access to on the home page. And if we ever have questions about what the different statuses mean, we have a quick work plan status guide of draft, submitted, and validated here. Again, draft being one that you're working on. Once you've finished it, you can submit it, and then those who have validator access will go in, and it gives them a chance to review the information that is submitted. If it's all correct, they will hit validate and validate the work plan, meaning it's completed. And DOCO will see that as completed. If not, you would then revert it back to draft, and we'll show you how to do that later. Also from here, just really quick to show you that you are able to access your account information. If your email address changed, you can update it here. You can also change your password here as well if you need to do that. I'm going to go back, and now we're going to enter our work plan. So to get to the work plan, you click the big middle, right in the big middle button. And again, as Martha was showing earlier, so it defaults to the 2014 progress. Then over here, you also have your 2015 plan that you'll start entering as well. Now, something to note as we're going through this and start looking at these different fields is that we're doing things just a little bit different this year in that normally you would have already have entered your 2014 plan at the beginning of last year. And at this point, you would be going in and just entering the progress on your plan. So you'll see, but for now, you're entering both the plan and the progress simply because the system was being created, and so you haven't been able to enter your plan so far. So you'll notice that some of these fields appear grayed out, and that's because the grayed out would be what you would have originally entered, and then what is in white is going to be your plan. So just keep that in mind, and I'll continue to point that out as we go through here. What would be your plan and what's your progress?
As a quick note, you are able and required to enter the information in the grayed out field, the original progress information. This is just sort of an indicator so that you understand the distinctions between what's being asked for.
Right. So in your 2014 progress, you'll see here you have the work streams, and each of those work streams is listed here. And you also have your normative areas. So for each of the work streams and normative areas that you will be entering information to, you will access those via this menu bar, and you'll go into each one that you're entering information to separately. We have often gotten the question of, what do we do if one of our outputs is related to more than one work stream or normative area? Essentially, you should select what is the primary work stream and enter it there. And so that's largely how it should be structured. You should have it one output working for just one work stream or normative area. If it is supporting another work stream or normative area, you can go ahead and put that information within the output description for reference as well. So let's kind of walk through. So we have our work stream here. Let's select one of the work streams we want to work in. Let's say common premises. And so here we see that we need to add an output. So we're going to select our button, and you see a 1 popped up on the side right here. So this allows us to see that we are in our first output. Now you can add up to as many outputs as needed per work stream or normative area. So you see here I could add 2, 3, and I could add several different outputs. And you see here this number is changing as I'm going through it. So I have output 1. If I wanted to delete one, I accidentally added one, I would just click on the one, and then whichever one I wanted to delete, and then I'd hit the delete button next to it, say OK, and then I just have my 1 and 2 left. So now we're going to start looking at the fields that are available. So first we have our expected output. So this would be part of our plan that we had at the beginning of the year. And again, you can enter that here now. So we would put our expected output. And then you'd go in and say at the end of the year or now what was the actual output based on what your expected output was. Then you're going to select your lead agency, and this is a drop down, and you're going to go ahead and you can search for one, UNDP maybe, and for this one, you'd only select one. For your partners, though, you can select multiple different organizations for your partners. And this also, if you see here, select all apply or type to add a new entry. Say, for example, I'm working with USAID, and I wanted to add them as a partner. You see they aren't in the drop-down, but if I type them in and hit enter, it'll create them as an entry. So now they are available in that field as long as I type it in. And then here is a section for you to add what the role of the partners is. So what exactly were the partners doing, how were they participating? So we'll move on to the new section, so the performance indicators and progress. And here we're able to add different indicators based on our output. So I hit new indicators. And now I have one indicator, and just like an output, you can add more than one indicator. So I could add multiple indicators here, and I would toggle between them via this button here. So I add performance indicator, the baseline value for that indicator, and the date that that baseline value is taken. So one thing to note here is that this baseline value was originally in your Excel spreadsheets referred to as benchmark. So if you had filled out the Excel spreadsheet provided to you by DOCO the beginning of last year, whatever you have in your benchmark is what would equate to your baseline value here. So there's actually just a few fields that were changed and added through the process of developing this tool. So we just wanted to clarify that here. And then the date, again, so when this was first taken, perhaps it was taken 2014, January, and so you'd enter that date here, and then means of verification, where can you verify where that benchmark was taken, and then the current value, so you'd be updating it at the end of the year, what was the value and when was that taken. So perhaps it was taken at the beginning of this year or the end of last year, you would enter that date as well. Now, one thing to note here, you're seeing that as I leave some of these blank, it's telling me that these fields are required. So any of the fields that you see that have a little red asterisk next to it are ones that are required. And it'll force me, before I save and submit, to enter that information. I could still save as draft the information I have without filling out all of the required fields, but it won't allow me to save and submit until I fill out everything that is required. So if it doesn't have a little asterisk next to it, it won't be required. And so I'll point some of those out as well. Now, if I wanted to save on space, I can actually close some of these sections. So I can close my indicator sections for now, and I could open that back up at any time to review what I've submitted in the indicator section. So these next questions relate to the outputs as well. So we have, and as you'll notice, these are not required fields, but we can enter our assumptions and risks about this output at the beginning of the year, and if our assessment of them at the end of the year, or if it was correct, if there were different things that ended up being risks by the end of the year, and then also support required. So this is what support do you need from DOCO or UNDG? What kind of support would you be requesting for this output? And then at the end of the year, what did you end up receiving? What type of support did you end up receiving on that? And again, that one is not required either. We also have our output budget. So the output budget is actually not a section that you enter any information on. You will be entering your budget information within the activity section, which we'll show you next. But it will sum up automatically all of the information, all the funding information that you are entering in the activity section. So it'll show you your total expected budget for this output based on each of the activities that you enter, and then the actual total budget allocation, which is your expenditures, for this total output as well. All right, so then we have our actual activities for this output, and you can add a new activity. And again, just like indicators, just like outputs, you can add multiple activities, and you toggle through them through the different numbers. And so if we go to our activity 1, your expected activity. So you would type what this activity is supposed to be. So perhaps, let's say a knowledge sharing conference, just as an example. And then you can say, oh, this is a good practice, and this is something that should be noted as a good practice. You'll select the little check mark for a good practice. And then you'd put in here, why is it a good practice? Who participated in this good practice? The goals, the coordination goals, and so this is a drop down here. Humanitarian assistance, for example. I guess that doesn't really work for what our activity is, but as an example. And then you could upload a file if you wanted to upload any information, any supporting information on why that is a good practice or information about that activity. You could upload that here just by clicking upload. Great. And then, again, to save on space, you can always close that section for time being and reopen it later. And then you're going to put on how did the actual activity perform? What was the performance on it? What ended up happening? And you can go into a little more detail on how that activity went. You can also do the start date and end date for this activity if it's spanning some time. Now for this, you just select a date, and if you, for the moment being, don't know the exact dates, just select a date within the month that it took place. And then again, the lead agency for this, and then the partners that supported. One of the questions we've had before is, what if there are multiple lead agencies? Select the main lead agency, and then in the role of partners, you can say OHCHR also supported as a lead agency. So that's where, in the role of partner section, you can go into a little more detail. And then we have our targets for the activity. So here again, you put what the plan targets were, what was actually achieved, and again, the support required and the support received from DOCO, the support requested that you'd be wanting from DOCO for that target. And I know right here there's an asterisk on it saying it's required. That won't be required soon. We are changing that as well. And if you keep scrolling down, this is where you actually put the budget information for the activity. So here it's going to sum up that information, but you're going to add a new budget line. This is where you add budget information. And you put where that budget is coming from. Is it from a donor? Is it from UNDG cost sharing? Is it the national government? You would select that here, and you put what the budgeted amount was for. So for example, $5,000. And you see that it totaled right here, and then you're going to put the actual amount. So the actual amount is the expenditure. So what was expended? Perhaps only $3,000 was expended, and it'll total that here. So if I add a new budget line, say I also received funding from a CSO, maybe I received $500, and then I received, and then I expended $500. Then it's going to total that amount for me for this activity. And again, I can delete any of these on the right-hand side by deleting that funding line. And let me just show you really quick. If I were to go into a different activity and add a budget, so we're on our activity 2, and I added a budget line here. Is it a UN entity? Let's say 700. Let's say 600 was spent. So I have that total here. Now if I go up to my output, I'm going to see each of the totals for all of my activities, not just the one I have open, totaled for the whole output here. So I see my total expected and my total expended as well, and then a breakdown for each of those. So if I received, again, national government funding for multiple activities, it would total all of those here as well, so I could see my totals for this output just by scrolling. Now if I get to the end, or maybe I need to go work on another project and come back, I can always save as draft and then go in to continue working on this as well. Say now I'm ready to add my annual letter. You're adding your annual letter is right here next to the work streams and normative area menu. And here I would just upload it. It's a really simple upload to upload that document right there. All right. So I think that's essentially, and then again, you can always go to your 2015 work plan and start inputting that data in your 2015 work plan as well. And so here you won't see as many fields as in your 2014 progress because it is only your plan at this point. And then when you go at the end of the year to update the information, you'll only be entering your progress on your 2015 plan. So again, this will have a few less questions being asked on your 2015 plan. Also just wanted to know another change of vocabulary between actual output, sorry, that's back in your 2014 progress, actual output in your Excel sheet from the beginning of last year would have been called the assessment of progress. So just another thing to note there, that there is a slight difference there.
Great. Thanks, Taryn. There are just a few more items we wanted to note since there have been questions to DOCO about them. So one of those is what is the criteria for including a budget in 2015? Essentially, if money is needed by agencies and will be raised and spent by agencies, should we exclude it from here? The answer is that the primary criteria for including a budget is that it was allocated to or spent on delivering results contained within the UNCT annual work plan. So that is an FYI. The narrative length required for output description, there is no minimum requirement, but the maximum is I think 1,200 words. So you will be able to enter information as needed. The report, once it's submitted, it will not provide an analysis of performance at this stage. The reporting module is still under development and should be available later in 2015 with the data you've submitted here. And just to go back and cover a couple of points again that we've been asked a lot, a validator can do everything an editor can do, so you don't need multiple staff members in that role. You can just have validators, up to 2 in your office if you wish.
And let me show you how to validate a project really quick, actually. So once I'm just going to delete this, what I've entered so far, just so that since I know I didn't fill in all of my mandatory fields as I was going through that, and that way I can show you what happens when I save and submit. So down here, I had filled everything in and I was ready to submit it. I would save and submit, and it's telling me, look here, that there was a few I didn't fill out. So again, let me just delete that as well.
What you're seeing is what the system will do if you try to submit your work plan without having filled out some of the mandatory fields.
Correct. So now you see here that my work plan has been submitted. So if I'm an editor, I wouldn't be able to do any more past this point. If I was, they can go in and view it. So if I click on here, I'd be able to view, and you see how this is grayed out. I'm not able to edit anything at this point. But if I look down at the bottom, there's 3 buttons that I can click. So there's revert to draft. If I hadn't finished everything that I needed to, I could revert this to draft and I'd be able to edit again. If I'm a validator, I will be able to mark this as validated. And now we see that my work plan has been validated. It's completed, it's finished. I will go in and say I forgot, I totally missed a section, I can undo my validation, and it'll go all the way back to draft. So I'll be able to edit what is needed in that. I can add outputs again, I can edit any field, and then I'd go again through saving and submitting, and then the validator would again review it and be able to validate and submit it as completed. So those are essentially the different roles that are able. And did we talk about the view-only access yet?
So eventually the system will be able to allow read-only access to some viewers. That's coming down the road, since the focus right now is just on data entry from your offices, but the reporting module should allow those who log in with viewer access to see data that has been entered, to facilitate better coordination and sharing of information between organizations in the UN. So as a final reminder, once you're logged in, or even before you're logged in, you'll be able to see the list of user support documents and download them. So we have a list of all fields, we have the presentation that you saw earlier, and we will also shortly include a list of frequently asked questions compiled by DOCO. Again, here are 2 email addresses you can use to get in touch about any issues. If you have to create a username or are having trouble logging in, contact Harold here in the DOCO office. He is also the person to get in touch with if you have more substantive questions about what is meant by any of the fields or the information you should enter.